Welcome to Two Girls with Grief podcast. We're your hosts. I'm Kendel,
And I'm Rachel.
a podcast where we talk about our experiences with grief. There might be tears or there might be laughter, but join us as we figure it out in real time.
We aren't professionals, we're just professional grievers. This podcast is for those dealing with grief, those who want to support friends or family dealing with grief, or those who just want to learn about grief. And without further ado, welcome to episode 9. I feel like it's like flying by.
I know.
And this episode is called Are We Still Friends? Surviving the Grief Fallout. So this will be an interesting topic. And as always, for potential triggers, please check the episode show notes prior to listening.
So, Rachel, where we begin with every episode, what is your grief like today?
Today, so I was feeling totally good today. I feel like I was very optimistic. And then I went to curl my hair. And then I started thinking like the curling iron that I had to use a straightener, was my sister's.
Well,
And it broke. It no longer, like, it just doesn't turn on anymore. It's this Hot Tools purple curling iron.
classic.
And yeah, and she used it. She always had great hair. And I used it every time I curled my hair, and it just broke. And I was thinking about it and like reflecting on it, and it like made me cry. And it's something like so small, but it's just like something you don't realize, like it just comforts you, just like to
Yeah.
have something that belonged to her and that I could use, regularly, and just like still feel connected, and just like something I have to like give up because it's like it's not
Right.
working anymore. It's like a
Yeah.
20-year-old curling iron. So yeah, I wasn't realizing just like how attached I was to the curling iron and just the reasons why. It's just like I think of my sister every time I use this.
Yeah.
So overall, like not bad, but yeah, it was something where I realized like I just really miss my sister and I cried about it. And I was just like, this is a
Yeah.
curling iron, but at the same time, it just like so many memories and things attached to it, and something that my sister actually used. So yeah, grief is weird like that. But
Yeah. It's like a king of
yeah,
grief.
yeah, like a ping of grief where you're like, oh, I wasn't expecting to cry over a curling iron, but that's life.
That's
Things
life, I
happen.
guess.
That's this life that's happening. So it is what it is. What about you? How's your grief today? Crying over any curling irons?
No, but I'm kind of in the same kind of like sad wistfulness. Today is my brother's birthday, and it's kind of like
Happy
one of
birthday
the
to your brother.
happy birthday, Jack. Hope you're having a good birthday. Who knows when we're gonna air this, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of as me and my sister we're thinking, okay, we got to do this and this and this, and it always just feels like it's never enough because our family isn't all together, and it's just
Yeah.
kind of this. It's like a clear gap. And I'm sure like you feel this at like birthdays or happy events, it's always just like a little bit sad because the missing person, it's like
Yeah.
obvious that they're not
Everything's
there.
feel different. Yeah.
And so, we try to go as much as we can for each other, over the top for each other for our birthdays, just so that like we know that we appreciate each other, but you know, nothing in comparison to like having our parents be there. So
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
always
a hard one. It is a hard one. That's a hard one because you can't really. I mean, you can just keep trying stuff. Like there's no like filling that gap. So
right.
that's always a hard thing. Holidays, birthdays, they all kind of suck now.
Yeah.
Sadly, sad talk. But always something we like to do is talk about our credentials to talk about this topic. So this topic's about friendship and surviving the grief fallout with friends. So my credentials are, as I mentioned so many times, is I lost my dad, my sister, and my mom. So that happened like during a 6 to 8 year period, depending like of the sickness and death. So a long time, which I think also was like a pivotal time in my life, and a lot of friendship changes during that time, and just figuring out like what I needed with friends.
Yeah.
So those are my credentials, and I'll dive into more of that in the episode. What about you?
Yeah. Yeah, I think after we'll talk about this more, but after the loss of my dad, it had me analyzing every relationship in my life, both romantic, platonic, my friendships, my family relationships. And it's just interesting that when you lose somebody, it's weird that all the other relationships in your life also kind of like feel that effect of that loss. A lot of my friends never even met my dad, and yet they were feeling like this repercussion or like this ripple effect from his loss through me. So, yeah, I'm really excited for this topic. So Rachel, did you experience any relationship blow-ups after losing someone?
I definitely had a lot of friendship changes. I think maybe at the time it felt like blow ups, and now just like the tiniest blip in my life that like it's inconsequential to me in the grand scheme of things. I think the reality it was really just that I had a lot of friendships that were not a lot, but like I had friendships that were more, I would say like fun friends, friends that you do like fun things with, and I think you can feel a level of closeness to them and realize like that sometimes you just realize like at a very pivotal time of what type of friend they really are. And I don't think there's anything wrong with friends being different things. I think it's totally great to have fun friends. There's friends that are just willing to travel more or do different things. Like your friends don't have to fit every like checkbox of what you need in a friendship, because there's people that I like to read with on trips and people I like to be more active, like you, it's totally fine to have friends that you express different parts of yourself. But I think at the time I didn't really realize that, and also just hadn't come to terms of like what certain friends are like the people that you rely on for stuff. I also had a hard time figuring out of just I've always been the friend that people call and like kind of unload all their problems to. And I think leaning towards like an unhealthy way,
Yeah.
because I think there's a difference of just like being there for your friends and having those conversations with people when they're having a bad day or something. And then there's like friends that need you to constantly be the one to cheer them up and kind of be their cheerleader and stuff like that. I think that's where you might need someone more fit to do that, to help you with
Yeah.
that and like figure out methods to do that. And where I took on, I feel like a lot of people's problems and pain, and I feel like that's kind of friendships I attract from just kind of like my childhood and different things. So I had to do a lot of readjusting when I realized like I can't be that person and I can't have those type of friendships anymore, because I can't take on other people's pain like that. And not like if you just have a bad day or, like I'm totally fine with like friends venting to me about different stuff, but it's like if you need me to be your cheerleader in that sense of like every day unloading, I can't do that. That's not for me. And I definitely had a situation where, yeah, it kind of came to head with just like how bad I was doing that, of just like still trying to be there for people when I was not at all mentally in a place to do that because I was going through my own shit. So it was just a good realization. I think at the time it might have felt more dramatic, but now I'm just like, it's just growing up and there's just different life pains that come with growing up, changing,
Yeah.
you needing different things, and I think that's okay. I don't think every friend in your life is meant to be there forever. Doesn't mean that you didn't still have a beautiful friendship, you didn't have beautiful times together. Doesn't mean you can't be grateful for them being in your life for even the whatever amount of time they were. So I think it was just like a lot of growth and figuring out like what kind of friends can I have in my life or do I need. But what about you? Did you have any friendship blowups?
I don't think like anything big nor dramatic. I think just I changed as a person. So the people that I might have been friends with, kind of like the same as you, like friends over fun things, but not really substantial or impactful. It was just kind of like a letting go. And kind of like I agree. People come and go, and like I think there's seasons for all that. And you might needed to learn a lesson from somebody, or there was a reason they came into your life and they're not there anymore. And that is neither good nor bad. It just is what it is. I do like have really close friends and they know who they are, and I appreciate them surviving the ups and downs of me trying to figure out my own grief. And they were great and supportive. And I think a lot of this conversation that we're about to have is not only about, the griever's relationship with their friends, but the friends also trying to learn how to be there for the griever, and kind of this reciprocal back and forth. And I'll kind of talk later about like, we'll touch on how I couldn't expect too much from my friends when I didn't even know what to expect from myself, because I was just going day by day, and I think they were too. And
Which is
so,
fair.
yeah, yeah, and I think at the end of the day, have forgiveness for yourself. If you've lost somebody, you're not gonna be perfect at this.
Mm-mm.
You're learning all this, and I was learning it for the first time and did not know how I was gonna respond to things. And so, if you're learning all this for the first time and you're trying to figure out how to survive, and I think most of us just try to make it to the next hour, we're not thinking so far ahead. But I also shared that grace and forgiveness to like the people in my life too, being like, they also don't know how to support me because I don't know how to support me. And so we're in this together. And I think like overall, I don't want to say it's ever a good experience, but if I'm trying to find the silver lining and the optimist view, I think we're all better for it because we learned so much about each other in that experience.
Yeah, for sure. I think, yeah, I mean, it's all a learning experience.
For
That's
sure.
It's ongoing and you have to keep learning and feels like you have to do always keep changing. Like, yeah, just go back to that. It was easy. But we kind of touched on it a little bit, but did you see like changes in your friendships since experiencing like losing your dad?
Yeah. So prior to my dad's passing, we had planned a camping. I don't want to say I planned it because I did not plan it, but my two friends, they planned it to go on a camping trip because it was going to be October. We were going to go to Oklahoma and it was really beautiful. The trees were changing. And then my dad passes. And so the funeral was, don't even remember, I think a Monday. They came down, they drove 6 hours. They went to the funeral and then they're like, if you want to cancel the camping trip, we 100% understand. And I was like, I don't know, but for some reason, I kind of need this.
Mhm.
And I, I, it was one of those moments where I think like collectively, me and my friends, we kind of overpassed this emotional like mountain together because I am crying belligerently at random times. I
Yeah.
am just chatting out my ass about death and grief and these new like epiphanies I'm having and these new revelations and all the anger and the hurt. And I'm just like, blah, 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 no filter. And they just let me. And I, I, I think that was so good for me at the time. I think like that I was so lucky to have that already lined up and planned, but that they still wanted to do that with me, despite knowing that it was going to be really difficult for me. Um, and so I think like that is one thing, like one key thing is like they created the space and they were there for me and they just let me go all at it, like full emotion
Yeah.
100%. Because I mean, it was not even a week later. And I'm very thankful for that time. Like I had great memories. And I think back to like that trip was tied into some of the healing I felt towards like going out in nature and healing and like seeing my dad and like the sunlight and the trees changing. And I don't like want to oversight, but the other friends that I had, they stepped up too in a lot of ways. I had one friend who had like pizza nights with me and she had lost her dad and she was willing to, which I think now someone who's years out from my loss, that she sat there with me as I dug up all that, like all the things and feelings that she had already felt. And she was willing to do that all over again with me as I went through it all for the first time. And I think like how I was very lucky, I'm very blessed to have her as a friend and like so willing to spend almost every Friday night crying with me about our dead dad. And yeah, I think there has been a lot of changes, but it's also been like we said, it's a whole lot of learning experiences. So like shout out to the friends. Like I put here like to the friends who understood the assignment. Y'all did great.
Yeah.
What about you, Rachel?
I think honestly, I mean, I think I really relied on like cousins
Mm,
mostly and just some of my sister's like best friends, especially uh through that. Like when my sister passed away, and when my dad passed away, I still had my sister. So I feel like it was like she was like really what I need, and I had my mom still.
yeah.
I was my brother, but I think I also have not been that person that lets everything out. I feel like I've always been someone that keeps things in,
Mm,
that doesn't share so much. So I definitely wasn't going to friends really and talking about it. So I think also a lot of my friends thought that I was okay, that, like, I was handling it really well, and, I would still do stuff, and I wasn't crying, doing anything. I was just kind of going with the flow doing stuff, so I think that also made people feel like, "Okay, she's, like, over it, she's doing fine,"
Yeah.
and I think in some spaces, I just didn't wanna feel normal. But I
Yeah.
I definitely become a lot more open with it and just saying the thing that I think now, where I would just hold it in, but I definitely kind of kept the crying and sharing things to, like, my cousins
Yeah.
and the people that, like, grew up with my sister. So, I think that's where I really kept it, but, yeah, I think it just kinda coming to terms now where I feel like I realized, like, a lot of my friends thought I just was totally okay. Like,
Yeah.
just like they thought I was doing fine because I was still out doing stuff and I wasn't crying in front of them. So I think there was a lot of like that disconnect of just me trying to just figure it out and not really knowing and not being someone that overly shared
Yeah.
in general. And I feel like that's where friendships where I was the person that listened to everyone. I wasn't like then sharing everything with them. It was just like me listening to all their problems. I've always kind of been that way. So I think it's been a definite change of me being the person that doesn't just keep everything in and trying to figure it out on my own.
Yeah.
Or at least, like, I mean, I would have shared with, like, my sister for sure. So, just, like, feeling more comfortable sharing more things with people has been a challenge for sure because I think, yeah, I gave off that, like, everything's good
Yeah.
type of feeling to people, and I was not. I was
And
not.
I wanna I wanna go off script real quick. I want to, like, drill down deeper into this because I think I mentioned this later on too, and I don't know what you call it. I was, like, dubbing it as, like, independent culture or independence culture, but there is this, like, image or expectation that when you're grieving, like, isolated, like, you handle it by yourself and, like, you don't talk about it, and it is, like, deemed weird to talk about it or to express emotion around grief, and it's, like, interesting that and I don't know if it's the same way in other cultures, I just can only speak to, like, where I live and my own experience, but I felt that same way of, like, why don't I feel like I can express this emotion? Like, a devastating, tragic thing just happened to me,
Yeah.
and I feel like me kind of looking back in retrospect, feeling like I should have been allowed to feel that, but at the time I didn't. And
Yeah.
you saying your experience right here, like, I think this is more of a larger question for society of like, we we expect people who are grieving to just deal with it by themselves. And I think
Yeah.
that's such an odd expectation to put on people.
Yeah, I feel like it's you feel afraid to, like, make someone else uncomfortable.
Right.
And it's like, I lost the majority of my family, so my whole life is uncomfortable now. Like,
Yeah.
everything has changed. So, yeah, I think there's so much pressure to, like, not make the other people feel
Yeah.
weird when it's like, I'm going through the hard thing. If
Yeah.
you feel slightly uncomfortable, why is that what I'm being, like, pressured into not even just, like, from them, but it's, like, society. It's like,
Yeah.
you don't wanna make the other person feel uncomfortable, but it's like, all I feel is uncomfortable with the grief and the sadness. So it's like if we really are close, if we really are friends, like I should be able to say that. But I think there's a pressure to feel like don't ruin the time by saying that. And it's like, well, things were really shitty. Like,
Yeah.
things are really hard. I don't think you go through losing so many people and you're just okay.
Yeah. And I think this like ties back into it took me losing my father to find out how many of my friends have lost really close people. And it's weird because like I didn't some of the people I had no clue. I had no clue that they lost someone so close and like a really important relationship. And it took me losing somebody to find this out. And I think that like ties back to the fact that grief and death and loss and mourning is not a normalized conversation.
Mhm.
But I wish it was because I felt like I'd be more equipped for this situation
Yeah.
when my loss happened. Like, if I had these conversations before, I would have a better network, I'd have a better support group, I would have better ideas on how to handle my grief, I'd have a community, and I just think it's like, are we hurting ourselves when we are not trying to normalize this conversation and create dependence on one another on how you get through the hardest time in your life.
Yeah, I think it's really hard also that I think there's not like a playbook, but I think it's just a very high tension time, a very emotional time, and I think it's really hard when you don't know how you're supposed to be feeling as someone that's grieving. Like, you don't
Yeah.
know what you're supposed to be doing. Might have pressure to go back to work. You might have pressure to do all these things. There's funerals, all these logistical things. Like, there's so much you have to do. It's very high pressure, and then you're trying to like function. And I think that can create a lot of friction, tension, arguments. And there's not like a playbook or a way for people to understand that, hey, like what maybe you should expect like someone grieving might do this or react, and don't give up on that. Like they still need you. They're just sad. I think because we don't have those conversations, I definitely know times that I was really snippy, just like don't talk. Like I think especially with my sister, I got very overly. I don't know if it's overly sensitive because I really lost my dad. She had been in a coma. Like I'm giving myself some leeway here, but I just got very sensitive about where who talked to me about what, like
Mhm.
who shared their grief with me and who I accepted that from.
Yeah.
And I had a very like fine line. I don't even know the type of scale that I was using. But I know that for some people they're like they got scared to even say anything to me after because I was very like don't talk to me, don't whatever, type of feeling. And it's just hard when it's like you're going through so much, but it's like at the time you don't really realize what you're doing either, but you also like some people just like never come back, and they're
Yeah.
like and they never
That's
know,
true.
not never, like they just don't know how to ever like bring it up again, and it just never has come up
Yeah.
again. And it's like, yeah, when it just happened, I don't want to talk about, like I'm having a hard time. It doesn't mean that we can't talk about it ever. It doesn't mean that it needs to be something you don't ever check on me for because of that. So I think it's just a really hard thing all around because I'm sure on the outside you're like, well, this person snapped at me or told me they don't want to talk about it right now, so I don't ever want to bring it up again.
Mhm.
And I think it's just creates misunderstandings in general.
So, has your friendships or the friendships that you're, like, looking to create, has that changed, like, the potential people that you're meeting in life?
I mean, I think definitely I I think before it's like I expected a lot from just one person or certain friends. I
Yeah.
think now I am very much okay with like certain friends are for certain things, what you do with, and some friends might not want to do the things you want to do or travel or whatever, and that's fine. Also, I think, I mean, this is the first time that I've been like making like grief friends, like friends like that I've been making that have experienced grief. And I think that has really opened up the floodgates of just talking about it and feeling that kind of comfortability with people. I had one friend, I think it was she lost her dad in college, and we know we're good friends, and I don't think I really understood it. I know I tried to be there for her in certain ways, but yeah, I definitely still have never talked to her really about this stuff, as like a common thread.
Yeah.
So I think Grief Friends has been a nice unexpected outlet of people, of just like people that you just share like your deepest thoughts with.
Hashtag find your grief friends.
Yeah, that you just, it's like, I feel like there's so much comfortability. We had a grief group this week,
Mm.
and I felt like it was just like a really great group. People were really open, and it was just funny. People were like, "I want to be like you," and I get like it was just funny of kind of the openness and like the tears and just the sharing. I think
Mhm.
it's been really nice. I feel like we're kind of like taking the next step of like being friends with everyone. And I think it's been nice. I It was an unexpected thing that I didn't know I needed. That you
Yeah.
just because I like I said I'm not like the big sharer, which is like okay I have a podcast and all this stuff now. But and I do I organize the support group twice a month, but it has taught me to share and kind of the importance of sharing and not carrying everything yourself. I think that's been a huge thing. So grief friends, and then yeah, just like friends that like just even like to do stuff like might like I have friends that I play volleyball with now. Yeah, and then you just see like, oh, do you like to do these things too? We can also do that. I think not everything has to be check every box. It's just
Right.
you could enjoy doing things with different friends. But I'm always down to make friends, and sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. And you never know who's gonna end up being a close friend. But yeah, I think generally I look for people that have a positive outlook on life in some
Yeah,
way, shape, or form. I do keep that for myself as well. Yeah, I definitely don't want someone that makes me go more into a negative space
right.
when I
Yeah.
can already take myself there
Yeah.
as myself. So like I don't need that from someone else. Do you feel like that something has changed for you for what you look for in friends?
Yeah, I think it's more like, I guess, tangible in the sense that after my dad passing, I took on so much more responsibility in regard to my family. And with that, a bunch of just other things. So I felt like I had less time in my day. And I mean, there was a point of like, wow, I have to like time manage like between work and like extra stuff that I'm doing and then like my friendships. Um, and so I think like that's partly like when we were talking about in the dating episode, like I haven't dated in a while, but like I don't feel like that's necessary to my happiness because I'm spending time with the friends that do care about me and they're very intentional and it's I think very there's like a lot of growth there. So I think like I'm very good with like very independent friends. I don't think I can have like a codependent friend after like the loss of my dad. I think before I
Yeah.
probably could because I had the time and the energy and like the mental space. But like right now in my life, I don't think I could do that. Like and not just like a friend, but like a partner. I think that's why I haven't like pursued real like relationships yet because like I'm not ready for that like everyday codependence. Like I was like I need to get my life to a point where I can
Date
manage
someone long
things.
distance. Like I'm
Tips from Rachel. Dating
keep your
tips.
independence. No,
Honestly,
don't.
good advice.
Yeah, you keep your independence. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
But you brought up a good point of just like codependent friendships. I definitely had those too. And I can't do those anymore. Like friends that just need you to talk to them. Like if you don't talk every day or whatever, it's like, why aren't you talking to me? Why are you mad at me? Type of friendships. I do think I had a lot of fun with those friendships. I do consider them kind of like the fun friendships where like they'd like easily agree to like go somewhere or like fly somewhere. And I think those are always nice. I think it's, you have to pick out what works. And even though I do like having those friends that are willing to just like jump on a plane really quickly, I cannot take the codependent friendships. I don't think maybe ever again. It gets
Yeah.
overwhelming where I used to like be okay with that and now I'm like I
Or
can't.
like dropping
Yeah.
off the grid. Like I think well my friends would probably like out me on this, but there are times like I just drop off the grid and it's just because I need to be by
Yeah.
myself, whether it's like for grief reasons or it's just like I'm so overstimulated with
Yeah.
social activity. And not it's not that I'm sick of them. It's not that they're bad people. It's just like for my own sake, I just need to like disconnect and not talk at all for a day or two.
Yeah. I feel like every time I do a very social activity, I'm like, okay, now I need to go lay flat for at least like 2 to 3
Yeah.
hours before I do anything else. I just need to like I don't know, like re not socialize, like I don't know, just
Calibrate.
recalibrate. That's the word I
Yeah.
was going for. Like, yeah, you just need to get back and you're like, okay, now I can do something else after I was super social. So, but for people that, and from your experience as well, but like, how do you think friends can navigate awkward conversations or uncomfortable sentences around death and grief and like just kind of bridging that gap? Because I think that's where there is a big disconnect of like, how do friends handle this?
Yeah.
And how do you not be so disappointed? It just like it's a very hard bridge to cross.
Yeah. And it's funny because like a couple weeks ago, I was talking to a friend about this who was like also struggling with something. And my friend was like, I want people to talk about this with me. I want them to bring it up. That indicates that like that they care. And I was like, wow, that's very fascinating because the whole reason I don't want to bring it up is like I just don't want to make you sad. And I think like this is an exact like, it's an example of grief and people who are grieving of they wanna talk about it, but they don't know how to bring it up. And so sometimes
Yeah.
it's easier if a friend brings it up, so it's kinda like the doorway, but then the friend is also conflicted because they don't wanna make you sad if you're having a good time. And I think that's kinda like the seesaw or, like, the tug-of-war that we're
Yeah.
seeing right now of, like, a person who's grieving, and then how does a friend support them? And so
Yeah.
I'm gonna use my example because 'cause I'm probably the most complicated case of when I wanted to talk about my grief and when I did not wanna talk about my grief, and I did not communicate this to my friends whatsoever because I didn't even know that I was doing this.
Mhm.
But, for me, it was very circumstantial. If I was just with my 2 friends or, like, my cousin or, like, my sister or something, like, I'm talking about it, like, it's a part of the conversation, like, no need to, like, open the door to that discussion, because it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
But if I was around people that I didn't really trust or know, or I'd feel embarrassed if I cried in front of them, because oftentimes
Yeah.
if I was talking about grief, especially at the beginning, I was also
Tears.
crying.
Yeah.
It was simultaneous. And so my friends, I think, not knowing when to talk about it, when to bring it up, they left that decision on me. And so I appreciated that they didn't bring it up at like dinner with a bunch of people because then I'm crying at the dinner table and then I'm like embarrassed and then I'm like, oh my God, I gotta leave and now I'm not having fun anymore. And I wanted a break from my grief. And this was like just a good time to like take a break from everything that was like swirling in my head and all the things I have to do. And so in some ways I didn't want them to talk about it. In other ways, if I was just hanging out with my best friend and she was just, she kind of like was nudging at it, kind of like implying at it, but letting me kind of like take the bait on whether I wanted to talk about it or not. And like she'd sit there, I'd cry about it. She still created space for me and was there. But like I said, I think that is so complicated, but I don't think I'm like unusual in that case. And I say that all because I didn't even know I was doing this or didn't know my boundaries with it, and I was not communicating this to my friends at all. I think it'd be very different now knowing what I know, that I would be very upfront and telling them, like, when it's just us, I have no problem talking about it. Feel free to bring it up. Like, if you have questions, like, I don't care. Like, they could be a topic of conversation. If I'm like around your friends, I don't even want them to know that I lost my dad. I don't want to be the sad girl at the party, you know?
Mhm.
So I definitely had weird boundaries. And I'm so sorry to my friends listening that I put y'all through that. I didn't even know I was doing it. But I think it is important for friends to, kind of gauge where that line is because it is. And I think it's also important for grievers. If you're in the space, if you're not in the space and you don't want to talk about it, I think that's 100% fine too. You don't owe
Yeah.
anybody any story, any emotional dumping. Like you don't have to if you don't want to. That's totally up to you. I think if you're in a space where you want to, I think it is good conversations to have because you're normalizing the conversation of grief and death. And I think like this only benefits everybody because we all have to go through it at some point. So that's my saga. What about you, Rachel?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a hard thing because I feel like you just like you have to have that conversation that
Right.
I think is like this isn't going to be perfect. You're
Mhm.
not going to know what to say. I don't know what to say with people that lose people. Like you could totally come on too strong to someone being like, "Well, just help me and let me help you." And that could totally be not at all what they need.
Yeah.
What helps you might not help somebody else. It's a very confusing thing. I
Mhm.
think it's nice to open the door of just like this isn't like it's not going to be a perfect situation.
Yeah.
I don't always know what I'm feeling. Sometimes I'm happy, sometimes I'm sad. Like it is a very ongoing thing. I think just kind of creating a space with people that you care about
Mhm.
that you can be open because I think it does there's a difference of losing people. I don't like comparing grief, but there's a difference of losing people that like were in your life every single day. People that you depended on, people that were a huge part of your life. even I lost like my grandma when I was younger and super close to her and I missed her, but it's like I grew up so much from her, it's like that I'm not like holding
Mhm.
onto. That isn't like what took me down with grief.
Yeah.
It's like growing up and then I lost my dad and then my sister and my mom, and it's like you don't know what that feels like until you lose someone that you would just be like the person that you call for everything that you can't call anymore. Like
Right.
that is such an intense like feeling of just knowing like the person that I called, I can't call anymore. There's
Mhm.
just no way to talk to them anymore. They're gone. And you don't know that feeling until you've gone through it. And there's just like there are different levels in terms of like how close you are to someone and how you feel. And I think because there's so much misunderstanding, I feel like miscommunication, it just makes so many awkward moments when you're trying to connect with other people that haven't experienced grief.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you want them to understand or you expect them to understand. And it's like I didn't even know what I wanted. And I think by me just trying to act normal in every situation, it's also, yeah, it just gave people the opinion that she's doing great.
Yeah.
She's handling in stride. She's not upset. She's not having the hardest time of her life dealing with the amount of loss that she's dealt with. Somehow she's okay about it. And that just really wasn't the case. It just kind of was the face I put out in the
Right.
world. And I feel like similar to you, it's like you don't want everyone to know. You didn't want to be the girl that like you don't want everyone to just look at you and be like, oh, how sad you lost everybody. Like
Yeah.
you lost someone,
Sometimes it's, like, easier, especially if someone's, like if you're not close with them and they're like, "How did your dad die?" Sometimes it's easier to just, like
God.
just be like, like, it's easier just to lie about the whole thing so you don't have to go into the whole, like,
Yeah.
backstory. It's easier just, like, there's no point in diving into it, like, I'm never gonna see you again or, like, we're not really that close, so what's
Yeah.
the point of, like, digging all that up for what?
Yeah. I mean, that is a hard thing. You're trying to meet new people and they're like we said, like if they ask about your parents or just your
Right.
siblings. And it's like, do I just lie? Or and it's like sometimes you just lie.
Yeah, it's
You
easier.
just admit or change the question. I think that does make that harder with making new friends because you want to delay what you say
Yeah,
and how much you share because it's a lot. You're sharing a lot of yourself really quickly with people when you meet new people. So yeah, I think for people that have friends that have lost people, I think just have that awkward conversation. Just know that there might be tears, there might be laughter, like we like to say. There might be silences. You don't have to fix their grief. I think that's a huge part of it is I think we're taught like someone dies, you go back to work, you move on. There's no fixing someone's grief. So you don't have to say the right thing
yeah,
because nothing you say is going to essentially make it better.
yeah.
No one's gonna tell me something that's gonna be like, "Oh my god, now I feel great that my sister and my parents died." Like,
Thank
there's
you.
nothing you could say. Yeah, like, "Wow, you said the magical thing that fixed this for me. Thank you." I think there's so much pressure to say the magical thing, and there is no magic thing. Just, like, accept that there's nothing you can say that can make it better. I think you can just try to be a good friend and just welcome the new normal of a friendship things where someone is affected by grief. I think that is really a big thing because I think that's where it gets really awkward because you feel like you have to fix it. I think that's why people say the things like they're in a better place, it was God's plan, or whatever, whatever. They're trying to say things that make it better. That you're not making it better. There's no fixing it. So I think just everyone understanding there's no fixing it. Just try to be a good friend.
Yeah.
Just have as awkward many conversations as you need. It's gonna be awkward. Just that's
Yeah,
life.
just say like, "Hey, this is gonna be awkward," like, call it out.
Yeah.
Call
Like
a spade, you know?
if I cry, I cry. I cry a lot. I cried earlier today, like over a curling iron. Like shit happens. Tears happen. You don't think you're gonna cry over a curling iron, but guess what? You might.
Yeah,
Might
that's
happen to
life.
you. You might happen to you. Yeah, just accept it.
So what do you think is realistic to expect from friends when they're experiencing grief, and do you think we expect too much from our friendships?
I think it's such a loaded topic because I've seen so many conversations where people expect their friends to know what to do. And I think yes, in a perfect world, your friends just didn't know how to help you, but in the reality is that it's just a really unique experience,
Yeah.
and it's a very sensitive topic where I think people are overly cautious, and I think and you're overly sensitive, right? 'Cause you're sad, you're in a hard place. I think it just makes, like I said, like, conflict where there doesn't need to be, because I think so many times you don't wanna say, like, "Oh, I need you as a friend," or be disappointed, and maybe, you will have some friendships that you realize were not good for you or whatever.
Yeah,
Um,
and
that
that's
could totally
sucks
happen.
within
Yeah,
itself, you know?
yeah, but I feel like you wanna know who those people are,
For
and
sure.
I think you should identify, because there are people that you could just go out with for drinks, have fun, but, like, you're not gonna be the person I call if some shit happens. Like,
Yeah,
that's fine. Like, they can be your friend and they don't know that side of you. I think it's totally fine. I think you just need to know what friends you can rely on for what things.
yeah,
And I think there's so much pressure for people to know exactly what to do, know exactly what to say for a friend. And I think if we've even talked about it in our Greek group, like, what would you say to somebody? Like, do you comfort someone perfectly? And everyone's like, no. Like,
yeah, and
there's
we've
no,
gone through it.
yeah, there's no perfect way to comfort someone. And like, what worked for me might have made you mad. Like, like and it could just be timing. It could be what you're feeling that moment.
You're right,
Like,
because it
there's just,
changes day by day.
yeah, it changes, especially when sometimes you might want to be social. Other times you don't want to see anybody. Like, it really is an ongoing thing. So I think just having more conversations. I think what happens often is your friends think it's this overly sensitive subject. They don't know what to say, and then if they're not saying enough, you're like, they're a bad friend. They're not there for me. They're not inviting me for stuff. And I think it's a very complex thing, because sure, sometimes there are friends and people that don't want to deal with grief and don't want to deal with your drama of sadness. And those
Right.
people you probably don't want to be friends with anymore. I'm not telling you what to do, but you probably don't want to be friends with them anymore, just because they no longer serve you for what you need, right? If that is their take on it, then that's probably not a friendship that is good for you anymore. But I think, in more so than not, I think friends don't know how to speak about it or handle it. And if they think that you're okay, they don't want to bring it up, they don't want to make you feel sad about it. I think a lot of people are like, "Oh, if I bring it up, you're gonna be sad about it, or it's gonna bring up a bad memory." And it's like, that is always there. It's not gone, unfortunately. Like, just because you bring it up isn't doesn't mean that I wasn't thinking about it 5 seconds ago. Doesn't mean I wasn't crying about my curling iron 2 hours ago,
Yeah,
Like, I think that is a misunderstood thing, that people think if they bring it up, then they're gonna be the one making you sad, and it's like, no, I that sadness is just always there. You bring it up is not. I think if anything, it's like, "Oh, you're thinking about me. That's
yeah,
nice." Yeah, I think I found out more often than not, like, people are like, "Oh, I'm thinking about you. I just didn't know what to say and to think." And I think that's definitely more common. And I think there can be I was having a conversation, and someone was like, "Well, I don't wanna have to tell my friends what to do. Like, I don't wanna like, I don't think I should tell them, like, teach them how to do this." I think having that attitude alone is just gonna break friendships, right? Because it's like, if you like, yeah, you don't need to teach them, like, while you're grieving, to be like, "This is how you be a good friend. 1, 2, 3," like,
yeah,
yeah, that's not something you have the capacity for. But I think it's also fair to just be okay, like, they're also maybe trying to figure out what to do, and they didn't handle it perfectly. That's because there's no perfect way to do it.
yeah,
And you could have wanted them to do something yesterday that you wouldn't want them to do the next day. And like, you have to also acknowledge that in yourself, that like, you're feeling those feelings too. So there's just not a clear way. And I think a lot of it's just misunderstanding. And we just need to, like, I think people just avoid the awkward conversations. And that would just save a lot of heartache. It's like, this is what I'm feeling. This is what you can do for his friend. This is what's helpful. And the real friends will be there, and they'll step up, because, and you're clear about it. But you don't always know. Like, I didn't know what I needed. I really didn't know what I needed. I was just still figuring it out, what
mm,
I need. But I think because it's still so unclear and it's like there's not a solution to it, I think we just need to have more grace on both sides, I think.
for sure.
If the friendship is worth saving. If it's not, like, who gives a shit? just keep moving.
Yeah.
What are your feelings on that?
Yeah. When it comes to like realistic expectations, like I know a lot of people will jump to like what they know and what they've seen, and that's gonna be like I'm gonna bring over a casserole or I'm gonna bring over gifts. And I think those are really sweet ways to show that you care. If you're in a position to do that, obviously it's very kind. If you can't, then I don't think that's the most important thing. I think the most important thing that you can realistically expect from friends, and I think what friends can also provide back to a person who's grieving is just that space to talk about it. And that could be like going to grab coffee or that can be over having dinner or something, but just opening that space for that person to talk about it and let them know that you're going to listen. You actually do not need to have the magic bullet on how you're going to fix
Mm.
grief, because if we knew how to do that, it would have already existed.
Yeah.
But I think in this time period of their life, just being there, just listening, you're gonna ask how you can help a million times and they're not gonna know either. And that's okay. Sometimes it might be little things, but I think also, like you said, just that grace back and forth of like this person is going through a life-changing event. Like they're not thinking how to maintain their friendships in the best capacity that they can or that they did before the loss.
Yeah.
And I think as a griever, having grace for your friends, being like, they are also going through this too with you, and they might not know the best answer. And that's okay because we're all figuring it out. And like you and I have spoken many times, even throughout this episode, it's so unique to the person. And that's why I think that space to talk about it and to communicate those feelings is like so quintessential to the friendship and the healing and how to help with the grief.
Yeah, just have the conversation.
Yeah, just have it.
Just bite the bullet, bring it up, and see what happens
Yeah.
because you just don't know. So, what advice would you give to people that want to be supportive friends but don't know how?
Yeah, I think, and I'm going to steal this from my friend who said, "No, I want people to talk to me about this. If I don't want to talk about it, let me have the choice to turn it down." But I think that not only for conversation, but for like inviting that friend who's grieving out to do things. I think like what we see in a common sense is like the person who's grieving, their friends invite them out and they're gonna be like, no, no, I'm just not in the mood tonight. And that's fine. And I think just over time, if a griever keeps saying no, the friend's just like, well, I'm not gonna invite them anymore because they
Yeah.
don't want to come out. But grief changes in different phases. So even though that might be like the first month from a loss, there's no saying that maybe 3 months after the loss, that friend is ready to go and do stuff again, like go out to bars, go out to have dinner, like go out to like have fun. And so I think just like, keep inviting them, let them say no. Don't assume that they're already going to say no. I think because just even thinking of them and inviting them to something shows that you care. And that alone means a lot to the person, unless they specifically say, like, hey, I don't want to be going out to these things, like, unless they specifically communicate that. But I think in most cases, like, I know in my case, I'm just very grateful that my friends kept inviting me, even when I was flaky, even when I said no to things. Like, they always invited me and they always let me make the choice to say no if I can or couldn't. Because sometimes I surprised them. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm totally in the mood to get pizza. Like, I'm in a good mood right now and I want to go see y'all and have fun and get out of my house. And just giving people that choice, I think, is really important. What about you, Rachel?
Yeah, I mean, I think to be a supportive friend, I think things that worked for me that I think it's like the inviting them places,
Mhm.
just spending time. I do think like opening that space of just talking about it because sometimes you don't realize like how much it's like taking a toll on your body by you just like not
Yeah.
talking about it, not releasing any of that, not speaking about it. I honestly have felt so much lighter since our like support group of just like sharing things that you don't share or talk about on the day to day with most people. So I think just being a support friend is like just like keep talking to them. It doesn't even always have to be about grief. Like I think
Yeah.
it's not every conversation has to be about that, but I think just being active in their life, inviting them to things, just being like, let's grab coffee, let's spend a day together, let's do something. I think sometimes you just need stuff to look forward to. So I think that's always good. But yeah, I think having those like these open, honest conversations, I think also to not to just like have an extra layer of like it's not about you
Mm.
type of thing. Cause I think it's very easy to be like, oh, they're being a bad friend because they're not going to stuff, they're not showing up. I don't think like unless you experienced it so deeply, like you don't know. Like you don't know what it feels like. You don't know how your emotions can change. You don't know how like something as silly as a curling iron will make you cry and make you feel really sad. Like you don't know that unless you've experienced grief. So and it's not always about you. It's not like that they don't want to hang out with you. It's not that they don't want to be a good friend. Just sometimes you're going through it and you're not. And I think just having that extra layer of understanding of being like it's not about me. They're just going through some things and like don't give up on them so quickly. I think it's so easy to just take it personally when it's like it's not personal. It's
Yeah.
just a really hard thing that you don't understand. And I don't want you to understand it to that level, but like because you don't understand, try to have some understanding,
Mhm.
I think is a big thing. You just like never know when someone needs to it. I mean, I remember, I think we've talked about like my mom's funeral. So many people asked me like, "How are you doing? Are you okay?" Like that's just like the question people ask, and I think I told everyone like I'm okay. But like, what are you gonna say, really? Like people say that. Like this is shitty. I lost my dad and
Yeah.
my sister,
The
and now
worst day of my life.
my mom's dead. Like what are you gonna say to that question? And I really batted everyone off for a response. And then one of my aunts who lived with us at a point, like I would call her like my second mom sometimes. Like when she asked me, I just like I was about to say that, and then I just like burst into tears. And like she hugged me, and it was just like that was a place that I felt comfortable to release what I was really feeling. And I was trying to be strong for the other moments. I just didn't feel comfortable like for the random people that were asking me that. And so you just never know when you need to release it or who is the people you feel comfortable with doing it. But yeah, I think just have some understanding because it's like I didn't even know that I was doing that at the time. Like I didn't know I was batting away people like by just being very dismissive with answers. I didn't realize that I was doing that. And looking back, I'm like, oh, I just was trying to hold it together. And then I just like the space that I felt comfortable, I released it. And like that's how unpredictable it is. So if it's unpredictable to me, please just, have some patience on the other side for it is my thought. Like just have patience. Patience and understanding, I think, is huge here.
Yeah. Do you think it's ever too late to fix friendship?
I don't think it's ever too late to fix a friendship. I do think though sometimes it dynamics change. I think it's what's hard. I think it depends on the friendship and the type. Like if it's a friendship for me in the sense that like you need me to be those like where I do talk to you every day, all the time type of friendships. Otherwise, like there's a problem, then I think it's hard to fix that because if you can no longer be that person for someone, that's always going to create tension. So I don't know that you'll ever, and not that you can't be on good terms, but you can't go back. It's like you're not going to necessarily be at the place you are, but you can also be on good terms. I don't like, there's no one that I hate. There's no one that I,
Right.
harboring bad feelings for. Even if we're no longer friends for whatever reason, I wish everyone well, like live your life, be happy. But I think, yeah, I think it's never too late. I think there's friendships that like sometimes you can just pick up right from the start.
Mhm.
I have friends where like we've had issues in the past, like not even for grief related, but in some grief ways, like super helpful because I've known them for so long and that there's like that familiarity, that like comfort with them, but like we're not as close and like there's a lot of it's not where it was before, but I still appreciate their friendship in the times that they're in my life. So I think it's never too late, but it might not be the same. Is kind of my answer to that. And you never know when like a friendship might be better than it was before. Like that can also happen. So
Mhm.
I think don't give up, but it depends on the situation, the type of friend. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it requires a very candid conversation from both parties. And I think the basis, having love and respect for the other person, regardless of the turnout, because I think that's just good protocol for being a human, is just to like be civil and be respectful to the other person. Yeah, depending on what it is, obviously it could be very hard, but I think there needs to be a realization on both parties of like, you know, can I support this person and does this person support me? And balance, does that balance worth that in my life? Um, and I think like if there's issues, it's always worth bringing up and talking to a person about it. Even if it's like people get upset. I get upset. I cry about everything, but it doesn't mean that
Yeah.
like I hate you or that I don't like
Yeah.
you anymore. It's just like ever since my dad passed, now a very emotional person about everything.
Shit
Um,
makes you cry.
yeah, shit makes me cry, and I've had to embrace that, but I don't think it's any like judgment on another person, but yeah, it's an evaluation. It's relationship by relationship and trying to determine if it's a good relationship to have in your life.
Yeah. It is, yeah, it's a lot. I mean, all of this is a lot. So if you're having friendship difficulties, just know you're not alone.
Mhm.
There's not a clear answer. We're all trying to figure it out. We're just professional sad people.
We're just crying over curling irons over here.
Yeah. Yeah. That's our credentials. We just cry over everything. So how in your like have you been able to like rebuild your social networks after loss, after losing your dad? Like have you been making new friends? Like what have you done? Open your circle back up after grief.
I think like step one was to realize like I'm not the same person as I was before my loss, and so thus I'm not going to have the same friends moving forward. I've changed fundamentally as a person, and now how I view the world has fundamentally changed, and the people I'm going to be friends with have fundamentally changed. I'm very grateful for all my friends, and especially my longest running friends. Like y'all carried me through my whole grief journey, so shout out to y'all. But making new friends, I had to incorporate that grief into me, and that took time. I mean, there was a long time I did not make any new friends. In fact, there was a time new friends came my way and I did not like them because I was like, I don't have capacity for new friends right now. Like I'm not even a friend with myself, like much
Yeah.
less make a new friend. And so I think when I came to a point, I think the inciting moment it was when I joined a book club. I think it was literally 2022, I think, and I joined a book club because I was like, I love reading. I want to read more and I want to make friends who read. And so I joined a book club and it's been great. So finding groups with your interest, whether it's like sports or hobbies, I think it was through a book club I realized how much unresolved feelings I had with my grief. I thought I was like good with it. And then I met a person who was going through the same experience. And that led me to joining our grief support group. And I'm so happy it did because like it led me to you and it led me to like reflecting and processing much more than I even thought I could. The reflection on grief and not being so like I don't let the grief carry me down so much. I'm finding ways to like bring the grief with me and in me and realizing that's as much as part of life as everything else. What about you?
Yeah, I think it was honestly just this year that I have made moves really to open my social circle. And it's been like I organize like outdoor volleyball on the weekends,
You really do it all.
2 weekends, like usually 2 weekends a month. I've organized like a cookbook club. I'm also going to organize a book club as well, but like once fall hits, when it's no
Oh, the
longer,
vibe.
yeah, just once to get the fall vibes going. And then like the support group as well, like do that twice a month. That has been a great like outlet that I didn't realize I needed. I always was like, I don't want to talk to people about it. And then you realize like, wait, I don't talk to anyone really about it. Like I do talk to like, family about it and stuff, but not even always like as much as, especially not as much as I have now.
Yeah.
and about different things and just being very open about like all of your feelings with it. That has been new and I didn't realize I needed friends
Mhm.
that just get it because I do think that there should be like a you should bridge the gap with like your friends that haven't experienced grief and like I think there could be a lot more just like understanding and connection through that. But I
Mhm.
do think there is just something nice and relaxing about talking sharing your grief to people that also know grief because
Yeah.
then you're not trying to explain things to them. You're not like as worried about what you're saying. Like if you cry, you're like we all have cried. So I think there's that level of just like the barrier to friendship is just very different because you're coming together for a very sad thing that yeah, that you're like you're connecting on a very deep level very quickly because you're like we might cry together and you experience those really sad moments and that's been really nice and not something that I realized like that I needed as well. And it was just like thinking about like okay, how can I make this year better? What can I do to actually enjoy my city, to feel more connected to people, to like make more friends, just to do the things I want to do. And I'm a huge organizer of stuff. So it's been a lot of like work, but it's also been a lot of fun. Like and it's been a lot more fulfilling
Yeah.
to me to do that. So yeah, it's been good. But that's just been like this year. Like this is new.
Yeah. See, like, it takes a while. This doesn't happen overnight.
It does not. Everyone's journey is different.
Right. Do you think you're a good grief support friend to your friends?
I feel like I feel like I just have two friends that kind of have that aren't like in our actual like grief support group that have experienced grief. I know before I experienced grief, I think I was always still trying to be a good friend where it's like try to remember like your like my friend's like dad's death anniversary and kind of send them a nice message and stuff. So I think it's always something that like I'm just that type of friend that tries to like be a good friend to people.
Yeah.
I think it's more recent where I've had friends that have experienced grief and different types of grief and I think just being like a sounding board to them and like welcoming them into like I actually organize a support group if you want to join like
Yeah.
and offering that up to them I think has been helpful and just but perfect or no like I think we all stumble on it and like we all handle things differently and I think even coming from a place of like I've experienced grief and you can't fix it, you like still want to like try to fix it for someone else by like this is what helped me and this is the resources and I think that could be overwhelming too. I've definitely even people that like not like super close to, but it's like you send them condolences for whatever person they lost and I've caught myself saying the same shit like that I don't like people have said to me. So no, I'm not it's definitely not a perfect system. I think even as someone that's grieved and like has gone mad at what people say to me, I've like, wow, I just fucking said that to that person. Like,
Yeah.
you're like, wow, why did I do that? And it's just, there's like that urgency of like wanting to be helpful to someone that lost somebody. And you're like, oh crap, I just did the same shit I said not to do. And that happens. So yeah, I don't think it's a perfect thing. And I know like, I've talked to people who are like, that are very like, I don't bring it up to me. I don't want to talk about it at all. And there's people that are like, no, I want to talk about it, bring it up. So it's like
Yeah.
everyone's different. There's not like a perfect way to do it. And I've just seen people have so many different responses to the same question. So I think there's just not, you're never going to be perfect with it. I think if you've lost someone, I think you're less scared of that awkward, like, I'll reach out to you. Like, I don't have, like, I'm not worried about reaching out to you. I'm not as worried about like my first message. Not that it's going to be perfect, but I think you're so used to grief, so there's not that, like, awkwardness of, like, "Oh, it's gonna be awkward if we talk about death." It's like, "No,
Yeah.
it's not," because I'm very familiar with that. So, I think that helps in a sense that you're not, like, scared of the conversation. I guess maybe depending on where you are in your grief, some people might still not be okay to talk about it. But, yeah, it's not perfect. Like, I don't know, like, I don't know the perfect thing to say to somebody at all.
Me
So
neither.
don't worry. Yeah, take away your pressure if you think that there's a perfect way. There's not. Do you feel like, have you ever felt like there's a good moment where like, yeah, I did great, or
No. One time I reached out to a friend and been like, "Hey, just letting you know I'm thinking about you." Happened that their grandfather died that day, and I was like, "Wow, very happy I reached out then," but that was just purely coincidental. Clearly, there was like a spiritual calling there. But actually, no, I think I'm pretty bad. I think I was a worse friend, and I think I've gotten better through this experience because now I realized how much support I needed, and hopefully I could be reciprocal with that. But, like you and I talk about, there's so much like sadness and joy, and there's some joy and sadness, and I'm like feeling that now. I might not be like super great as a grief friend. Like I get it, and I will talk about it. Clearly, you and I talk about this all the
yeah,
time. Like I have no problem talking about death and grief now. But my best friend is about to have a baby, and I can tell like I'm so excited for her. I'm excited for like all like there's just so much excitement and joy around it. And I don't know. I think like for all she's helped me with my grief and like being there and listening to me sob about everything, and I'm so excited to like return this favor to her and be like go have a date night with your husband. Like let me watch your baby, or like let me let me do her diaper, his diaper or whatever. Like I am just so excited to like give all that love that she gave to me in return to her and with her baby. And I'm just really, I don't know. It's just a new phase of friendship, and I'm really excited for that, for like her and for me and for us to like see each other. I mean, we were middle school friends, so like to now enter like adulthood
yeah.
and he's about to have a baby. So I don't know if I'll ever be like a perfect grief friend like you, but I'm just trying to be like a better friend overall to all the friends who have really helped me through the hardest times in my life. So
I think
yeah,
that's all you can do because no one's a
what are
perfect
you gonna do?
friend in general. No one's perfect at all. So
Yeah,
I feel like there's that pressure of just like it has to be a perfect interaction. It
yeah,
does not. It does not.
yeah.
Just
Y'all,
you
you'll never know
care.
what to say. That's
Yeah.
okay. You
You're
move
gonna
along.
probably put your foot in your mouth. Like we've all been there.
Yeah, I mean, even if as grievers, we've done it.
Yeah. So take out the
Well,
pressure.
yeah, like every episode, we end the show with a challenge, a weekly challenge. And so this week's challenge is, have you ever had a friend break up? And do you think it was justified? Kind of reflect on that moment and just kind of see like what could have been changed if with the grieving emotions and out. What else do you want to add to that?
I think we could also add to that, like, is it a friendship you want to fix or revisit or just have another conversation? Sometimes, the friendship can't ever go back, but I think sometimes you just need a conversation of clarity and understanding, and you can end it with like love and just like I wish you well. Sometimes you need those conversations even if you can't rebuild the
Closure.
friendship. Yeah, so I think, reflect on if you had a friendship breakup because of your grief, and would you have done something differently? Like, and it's never too late. As long as they're alive, it's never too late. So
Yeah, that's a good point.
if you know grief, you know that like there's that finality. So if they're still alive and you miss them and you want to be friends, you can at least try. They're here, you can try. So it's never too late when they're alive.
I love that. If you're looking for resources, we'll include some in the show notes. We have new episodes every Tuesday where we cover a grief topic. And we also have a grief book club with like a little mini-sode on Mondays where you can follow along with the books that we're reading. And that has been really fun to cover different books. So hopefully you can join us there too.
Yeah, that's actually been super fun. If you're here on Tuesday, then you know that our new book that we're reading is Emily Henry's The Beach Read. And this is a fictional book that has grief themes, and it was my choice. So you can slowly pick up on the choices that me and Kendall pick. But yeah, we'd love to join you. We'd love for you to join us for that as well. It's been really interesting and fun and reflective in a different way. Like, definitely, like actually dissecting and kind of breaking it down has been super therapeutic, which I wasn't really expecting. But it's been nice to kind of break those things down and see how these books made you feel. So yeah, join us for that. And if you're a romance lover, Emily Henry She's great. But she's also like it's like deeper themes in that as well. So
For sure.
yeah, so join us for that. And then how to join our club. Hopefully, we welcome people that haven't experienced grief. We hope that you haven't. But you can follow us and connect on our Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. It's all Two Girls with Grief Pod. You can also email us. We'd love to hear your challenges. If you have any questions, you can email us at twogirlswithgrief@gmail.com. All this will be in the show notes for you to easily find and contact us. And as a reminder, grief looks different for everyone. So if nothing we said ever has resonated with you, like that just means that we process things differently, have different experiences and opinions, and nobody's wrong here. We're just all figuring it out. But yeah, it definitely doesn't mean you're wrong for sure as well if you don't resonate with anything. And yeah, thank you for joining us, everyone, for our 9th episode. And we'll see you next week.
See you next week. Bye.
Bye.